moving to another country, you're going to have to start over. When the reality hits, it hits a bit different when you have to actually experience that whole starting over process. There are places that we've gone before that we absolutely loved. Paris is one of them. Only thing I would do differently is come earlier.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of Moving to Markham. My name is Ralph Ciencio, real estate broker specializing here in Markham. And for the last 17 years, I've helped people move from all over the world into Markham. And today we're going to have a great discussion with a good friend of ours, Andrew O'Connor. And Andrew is going to be giving us some insight on his journey moving to Canada. He's new to Canada the last maybe 13 months or 15 months he's been here. And he's going to give us a background look or a behind the scenes look of his journey, what drove him to come to Canada, and some of the things that he's learned along the way in being an outstanding Canadian. So without further ado, I want to introduce Andrew. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Rod.
Yeah, it's great seeing you. And I really appreciate your time. I know you're busy. You've got a lot of things on the go, a lot of balls in the air, and you took some time out to share with me, but also to share with our viewers out there, people listening in, wondering what is it like to move, from outside of Canada into Canada? Because a lot of times as a realtor, we talk about moving and it means from Unionville to Richmond Hill or moving from one side of town to another, moving from a country, almost a continent away, all the way into Toronto or Toronto area is definitely an exciting path.
Yeah, it's been interesting. And of course, we have spoken before, so I'm excited to share my story with you and your listeners today.
Amazing. So a little bit of background. Andrew and I first met last year in the fall. Our sons play soccer together, and we were chatting, and he had explained that he had just moved to Canada from Jamaica, and I was, of course, tons of questions pop into my mind as to, first of all, why are you in Canada in the fall? It was like maybe September to October. I was like, when you came from Jamaica, I can't solve that problem, but it'd be interesting to understand. So tell us a little bit about who you are and where you came from.
All right, so my wife and I, Michelle, came here with our son Josh, as you just mentioned. Josh was 12 at the time when we came. We decided to move here because we wanted to get or give ourselves more opportunities, different options. So we were born and grown in Jamaica. So we spent all our life there. That's all we knew. But we knew that there was more to life than just within the shores of Jamaica. So we thought about, hey, where could we go possibly? We visited Canada a couple of years ago and we liked it. And of course, Canada is known for being family oriented, kids and so on. So we said, hey, let's shoot our shot.
Wow. Now, did you travel to anywhere else? I mean, I know you went to the United States a couple of times you had mentioned, but was there any other countries that were in contention when you were traveling to Canada or thinking about, where to move to?
There are places that we've gone before that we absolutely loved. Paris is one of them. But of course the language difference was of course a hindrance for us. And Canada being North America, which we are so accustomed to North American culture, we said, hey, let's consider that before we consider a move across to Europe.
That's a really good point. I mean, language itself comes complicated, right? And when you're in the same, I mean, I guess, Commonwealth country, some of the similarities in terms of laws, just things that we do, probably overlap quite a bit with Jamaica, would you
And
say?
then just based on where we were, in Jamaica, you're so ingrained in North American culture. We have North American channels, so it feels as if you're almost North American because you know everything that's happening there. So I think for us, the move to Canada was a lot simpler than even considering Europe at the time.
Yeah. I think that makes total sense. Sometimes I empathize when I see someone that's new to the country and they're trying to get some communication and they're trying to say something and they're stumbling on their words. And I think, man, if I had gone to Hong Kong, like, what would the local person think of me? Or if I was, in Germany, what would they say about me? Right?
I remember the first time we went to downtown Union Station, and of course, if you've been there, they're like, is a whole heap happening. And Michelle said she can't imagine people who come here and don't know English or they're not very strong in English because you have to be able to read. You have to be able to speak, to ask questions and so on. You can't just figure things out. So, that language barrier was, of course, a significant point in our decision making to come to Canada.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so now from let's go back in time to when you first planted the seed that, "Hey, we wanna search for a better life for our future and for our son's future." What was the duration from when you said, "Hey, I wanna move," to when you actually packed your bags and got on the plane?
Um, to be honest, I think it would be about 5 years. Yeah. Just having those simple discussions. Hey, do you think you could? Let's consider here, the conversations move till, okay, let me do some research to see, how that what would we need to do? Talking to friends who we know would have moved here before. So from the seed was planted till we reap the fruit was about 5, probably 6 years.
Oh, well, and it's worth noting, I mean, both you and Michelle were, professionals with many, many years of tenure. I mean, you worked in finance, you worked as an investment banker, in Jamaica or working with an investment banking firm. And 15 years working there, it's not as if you were just a vagabond, moving around. Like you had to, you were uprooted, right?
Yeah, it wasn't an easy decision, to be honest. Because we would have spent so much time building our careers there, and then, to move to a new country, you have to start over. So, I think about even us getting our driver's license. I've been driving since I was 19, 17. But no, to come to Canada, I have to pretend to be a new driver, so that's part of the whole starting over process. And as much as you know that is gonna happen, and you know that, hey, moving to another country, you're gonna have to start over. When the reality hits, it hits a bit different when you have to actually experience that whole starting over process. Even just applying for jobs, no one knows you, no one knows your experience, no one can vouch for you to say, hey, I worked with Andrew, I've seen his work. It's really just starting over.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And that's a great way to put it, starting over, because I mean, you didn't have any family. You have cousins and stuff here, but no other real close family.
Yeah, I have a cousin who lives here, but it's one of those distant cousins. We became much closer since we moved to Canada. She and her family have been instrumental in helping us to settle. So like before I told her I was in Canada, I was coming to Canada the day we came to Canada. So that's just the type of relationship. It was, those you used to talk to them in Christmas, birthdays, and so on. But we've become really close since we've been here. They've helped us tremendously, just showing us the ropes, taking us around, and so on. We've met some awesome people as well. I'm sure we'll get into that at some point, because I'd really love to share that story. But yeah, that was the only family that we had. Michelle had an aunt. She lives up in Vaughan. Um, so we've had persons who we can lean on, and they've helped.
So I'm curious, you're at home in Jamaica, probably looking at the waterfront, drinking some delicious coffee, and you say, I'm going to go to Canada. And for whatever reason, you said, this is the place to go. And I understand there's a million reasons why Canada is an amazing place. But in Canada, you have a bunch of micro decisions. You can say macro Canada. Okay, macro North America. Okay, then Canada. And then British Columbia, Ontario, Alberta. Like, and then from
Vancouver.
there, how did you decide Markham? Like, I'm trying to understand the mindset of how did you pick here?
I wish I could tell you that there was some light bulb moment, but it really wasn't. Michelle did some scouting before, so she came here a couple of months before our actual move. So this was actually after we had decided to come to Canada. We still weren't sure exactly where we were going to go. Michelle came and visited Markham, and she instantly fell in love. So that's the decision. That's why we're here in Markham.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's simple. So our last visit, we were in um Waterloo, and I loved it there. But Michelle said, "Hey, Markham is a lot better." So I trusted her judgment.
Well, I think she made a great choice. Waterloo's a great place as well. I went to school in Guelph, which is, they call the Tri-City area, Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge. Or Guelph, I should say. Actually, it's a tri. That'd be a four if they had four in there. But, um, I think that Markham has a lot to offer for families. Josh was coming in grade seven. Tell me a little bit about that in terms of what's it like to make those decisions when you have, an adolescent, a young child that you're bringing along with you, and they're just saying, "Mom, Dad, where are we going?"
So the thing with having a child is they become the point of all decisions that you make. So like even in determining where we're gonna live, within Markham, we had to find somewhere that was close to a school that had a good rating. So it wasn't about where we liked or where we found appealing. It was really about, is Josh going to be able to attend a good school if we live here? So he was the driving force behind the decision in to move to Canada. And then of course he's the driving force behind where we actually settled, eventually settled. So it's good to have like that North Star that directs all your decisions. Sometimes it's a bit challenging because they're competing interests. But of course, children always come first. So yeah, he has been the driving force behind all the decisions that we've made.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and that speaks to you as your family values and you in terms of your character. I mean, I know you, and I know that Josh is the center of the decisions you make every day now, let alone where you're going to move to. From my experience in helping so many families move into the GTA, what I've noticed is that the primary thing that people look for is going to be close to family. And then the second thing that they'll look for is somewhere close to jobs. Now, if there's an absence of family or they don't have a job yet, then they look at schools. Because ultimately, the reason you're moving, the reason why most people move is for a better future, whatever that means for them. They may be coming from a war-torn country. They may be here as refugees. They may be coming from a very affluent country, but they just see more prosperity or safety or work-life balance in Canada. But that seems to be the trifecta of, you know, close to people or community that family, work or work opportunities, and then, of course, where your kids are.
Yeah.
Right? Those seem to be the drivers for family-based decisions.
But thinking about it in that order that you shared, I think it was good that we didn't have family to drive that decision, because I think if we did have close family, then we might have followed that trajectory in terms of, okay, let's find somewhere close to family. But because we didn't know anyone, so wherever we go or wherever we ended up would have been new and there would have been just us. I think that kind of removed at least one variable, just kind of cleared the water a little bit more, and then just had to focus on Josh.
Yeah, that's amazing. Very noble of you to say, I'm happier that I'm in a situation where I didn't have the comfort of family nearby so I can make a decision for my child. That's awesome. I hope people listening in could hear the love and the fatherhood saying, I made the decision. I'm glad that I didn't have to decide based on my values. It's only about what matters to him.
Yeah, that
Um,
made it a bit easier.
yeah. You know what I think is so interesting? I look back at my parents who came here, I mean, from Argentina, and they were here in the early 70s and or mid 70s. And, their journey, when I talked to my mom or I talked to my dad, they had different journeys getting here. What my dad had done is he came to visit his uncle and just for a, 2 week or 1 month visit, and then fell in love with Canada, went back to Argentina, eventually sold everything he had there and started here from zero, and he came here on his own. My mom was living in Buenos Aires in Argentina, and her family decided to move out of Argentina to Canada, and they had moved because they had family here. So my grandfather had siblings here, and my grandmother as well. So it made it a lot easier for them to integrate. They knew where to move because their sister said, "This is a great street. This is a great neighborhood." Um, and then from there, I look back at my childhood and that impact of that journey is like they grew up so close with all my aunts and uncles because that's all they had. They didn't have any other community, any other group of friends, or, for them, they had a language barrier. So it's not like they could just walk into a community church or walk into a bar or a restaurant and make friends. It was not that easy back in the 80s. Uh, so I always think about that as well from a new Canadian, a newcomer's perspective is that do you have a sense of community here or did you have to build it? You know?
We had to build it, and funny, I was talking to someone the other night, and they actually gave me a light bulb moment, because the reason why we came here is for Josh. So he because of him we left our friends and family, but because of him we have now inherited friends and family. So you mentioned that our kids play soccer together.
We say football, but
Yeah, football. I'm sorry.
I say soccer.
So, him playing football has really introduced us to some really great people. So yourself, you mentioned before that we met when we were doing tryouts. I think you were the first person to talk to us on the team. And, you and your family have been really welcoming and helpful to us. And we've met some other families as well. But I think most of our community now has come from Josh playing football. If it wasn't for Josh playing football, I think we would be locked up in the condo
Ah, I
24
disagree.
hours
I
a day.
disagree. I think that both you and Michelle are community people. You're not looking to just be a part of a community. You're trying to be a pillar of the community, and I've seen that in so many different aspects. And I think that the soccer family, football family, that's one way that you manifested who you are, and it just happened to be on a pitch. But I think it would have happened somewhere else if, for example, Josh was into Lego. You would have been like the king of the Lego man, that's whatever you would have been into. And I think that it speaks to your character of just being close to people and caring about others and valuing others. So
Yeah, and I think that that comes out even with what we used to do before. I mentioned to you that we were leaders in our church, and we led marriage ministry, family life. So we've always been kind of that, you mentioned pillar, but kind of that anchor to people. So whether it be marriages or families or single persons, we used to be the hub. So I think it has kind of boiled over to our community now, but we still have to thank Josh because he is the one that gave us that footing.
yeah, oh, definitely. And I'm so interested in that part of your life. I know the idea of marriage counseling or family counseling is something that you've shown definitely passion towards. Do you see yourself progressing in that in the future?
So we have a long term goal to do podcasts to start out with, but eventually to like host seminars and conferences just for marriages. Because one of the things that we committed to before we got married is to always invest and work in our marriage. So if you wanted to be a realtor, you studied, you did your license and so on. If someone wants to play basketball, they go to practice. Not many people put that effort into marriages. You find someone, you decide to marry them, you're gonna spend your life, and you get married, and then that's it. And then you just start life over again with that person. But you have to really invest in it. You have to put the time in understanding, um, how do my actions affect this person? How does their actions affect me? How does my decision today impact us 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road? So we've been really passionate about that. We've helped couples in the past. So that's something that we've always wanted to do and still want to do. But of course, with the move now, it's kind of pushed back because priorities get rearranged from time to time.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it'll take some time to sort out what the immediate thing you need to do today, but it's great that you have this focus on something in the future because you start picking up relationships, you start picking up communities, start picking up ideas just along the way. And maybe 3, 5 years from now, when you say, okay, I'm ready to take on another challenge, you could start exploring that. I think the idea of having a solid marriage is so important, and I think that right now it's become so common for marriages, for relationships in general, to fall apart. I think we live in a very disposable mindset. Our culture is very disposable. You get a $2,000 iPhone, it's the best thing ever. You handle it with care, and in a year, you need the new one. And it's just that mindset of I need a new one. This one's no good. This one's broken. And that consumerism, as it relates to family life, it doesn't meld well because I believe as marriage is until death do you part, and you need to work on it. And like if there's a problem, it's gonna be a problem for a very very long time for me unless I can fix it and taking responsibility for the relationship and really valuing it, like honoring it, right?
Yeah, but as you said, nowadays, it's different. Like I love you today, tomorrow I may not love you, and that's okay. But it's really not because, as you said, we took an oath from to death do us part. I remember when we were doing our premarital counseling, we spoke about um not having any sleep on the couch nights. So regardless of what happened, even if it's not resolved, there's no sleeping on the couch because we're in this to the end. So it's different nowadays.
Because you have a comfortable couch.
Marriage today is not the same as it was when our parents got married. So it's kind of how do we keep the essence of marriage even in today's changing world.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Something that runs through my mind all the time as I'm, just at home and I'm chatting with my wife or doing something all together. I'm thinking, this is how I'm training my kids how to be a father, how to be a man, how to be an adult, how to be a husband. And, sometimes I catch myself, and I had a couple of stories where, my son will find that like I have an element of rage in me. I'm just so passionate. Sometimes I lose it. And I work hard to sort that out, to suppress it and use it only when it's appropriate, mostly on the soccer field. But sometimes I'd find like Adam, for example, have a ton of rage. And, I remember one time I was driving out with him and I said, "What you did yesterday was not appropriate." He says, "It's not appropriate. And I apologize to you because I taught you that." I go, "You weren't born with that, with those words. I somehow taught you those words. Whether it was me directly or something I let you watch on TV or a friend that let you, hang out with, I own that responsibility. I'm sorry. And I'm not going to let it happen again for you. And I promise to you that I won't let it happen again. You won't see that from me." Fast forward, few days later, something happened at home and he just blew up. And, was sent into his room. I said, "That's it. I'm done. I gave you a warning. Get to your room. That's it." And it was maybe 6 p.m., 9:30 at night. I forgot that I had sent him to his room. He's up in his room crying his face off. And I said, "You okay?" He goes, "I'm sorry, Dad. I lied to you. I told you it would never happen again, and it did." And he goes, "But you lied to me too." He goes, "Do you remember yesterday when you lost your cool and you yelled?" And I literally started to cry. I'm sitting there on his bunk bed and he's crying and I'm crying and I'm saying, "Man, like, ah, I did. I lied. I told you it would not happen again." So I think as we talk about relationships, whether being a parent or whether we talk about being a partner, spouse, or just someone in the community, is like you got to walk the walk, you got to talk the talk.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really heartwarming story. I could share some as well, but I don't want us to get sidetracked.
Sentimental. We're gonna just get rid of the table and hug but let's change gears a little bit. I want to talk to you about professional career. So you came in with a background working in finance, and now you've decided, you know what, new year, new you, new phone, who dis? So tell us about your new venture, where you're focused on, where you're heading.
All right, so I've always had a passion for restaurants, bars specifically, and one of the things that we decided in coming here is that I would do a diploma in food and beverage. So if it is that this is my passion and this is my long term goal, then might as well get some amount of formal education around it. So I'm currently doing food and beverage at Centennial College. It's a 2 year diploma. It's been awesome, to be honest with you. Like, it doesn't feel like I'm going to school because I'm now formally learning things that I would have known before. Just like learning about wine, learning about the different spirits, learning how to design a restaurant, and so on. So it's been absolutely fun. And the end goal is to someday open my own restaurant. I still haven't come up with the name yet, but I have the concept. I'm working on the business case and so on. So yeah, it's been really good. So that shift from finance to food and beverage, on paper it seems like it's this night and day, but at the end of the day, the bottom line is people. In finance, we're serving people. In restaurants, you're serving people. You're attending to person's needs. You're preempting what they want and preparing something for them before. So it's the same thing, is just being done differently. Even your business, it's people.
For sure. We say we're in the real estate business. No, we're in the people business. And ultimately, I think in both, sides of the table, when we say it's about people, it's about relationships and it's about trust, right? And you have to be trustworthy to earn the trust of others. And then once you have their trust, you can provide a service that hopefully makes them happy and makes them feel like they made the right choice.
Yeah, and I think once you build that trust and you earn it, you can sell them anything. Of course, the trust, you can't erode the trust just because you have it. So you have to earn it and then maintain it. So if you have something that you're selling one of your clients, I'm sure they trust that if Ralph says it's good not because he wants to sell, but because he knows that this is what you want and you trust his decision. So
Sometimes I feel jealous when I look at the, restaurant business or food business. And I feel jealous because I think, for example, if I was a bakery and I had bad bread or stale bread or a bad service, well, if I buy bread every week and I go once and you turn me off, I'm not going to go there again and that business is going to go out of business. Whereas in real estate, if the real estate agent or the realtor doesn't provide great service or, botches the deal or does something horrible, the client could be very, very upset, but that realtor doesn't feel that pain until 7 or 10 years later when that person wants to move again. So that person can have a whole career just serving people once and fall off, once and fall off. And they can make a living being horrible. Whereas if you're a bake shop, you can't. If you're a barber, you can't. If you do a bad job, if you have bad service, you wrong hours, wrong prices, you go out of business quickly. And I wish there was a way that in our industry, as you know, as realtors, I wish within our community there was a way that if you're doing a bad job, you get out. Like, you need to be kicked out because you know, ultimately, we want a great experience for our clients, but the thing that we advocate for is raising the bar for our industry. I think buying and selling a home is so important that you need to have the best advice possible. It's too expensive of a decision to make a mistake. And I think that there's gotta be a way to elevate the standard for our profession. And, I know that you have similar standards in terms of how you treat people, and I know that, opening up your own restaurant, you probably have an elevated service. Like, I'm sure what your standard would far surpass, you know, other restaurants in the area.
Yeah, and just going back to the making a mistake in food and in the food industry, I think you only have a one opportunity. Because if you go to a restaurant, as you mentioned, a bakery, you go to a restaurant and the food sucks, you're never going back. Why would you? You know. So it's gonna be important to me to ensure that that first impression is what builds that relationship or starts to build that relationship. And of course, I've always held myself to high standards. I see no difference in me running my own business now. If you talk to persons who I've worked with before, the standard is the standard and we keep it. We're not bending it because today is a rough day or because you're tired. No, the standard is the standard and we're keeping it. Yeah. So that's one of the things that we're looking to do.
Amazing. And, I don't know, do you wanna talk about Marriott? I mean, you're working there now. Any similarities? I mean, right now you're working, in a position at the Marriott hotel, and so in a sense, you're working in real estate as well, just on a shorter term stay.
Yeah. So I've been at the Marriott since I think this is now 7 months. And it's been my first taste of food and beverage. So it's been good. It's been a good experience, eye opening to understand that what we've been taught in school is actually happening in the real world.
Do you think that it's, like, paralleled, or is, like, Marriott work at today's pace, but maybe what you're learning is 5 years ago, or do you feel like it's pretty parallel?
It's pretty parallel. It's pretty current. One of the things that I applaud with Centennial is that they keep their programs up to date. So they have committees with industry professionals who guide and say, hey, this isn't working anymore. Let's do this. This is what is happening. Let's start teaching this and so on. So they're pretty up to date. Um, my intention was never hotels. I just ended up there. Sometimes life throws you a curveball and you have to find a way to hit it. But restaurants is really where my passion is. Just to be able to interact with people on a constant basis. At a hotel, it's not so much. You still get an opportunity, not as much as I would be comfortable with or I want, but it's good. It's eye opening for me.
Yeah. What's interesting, every community has its own, kind of nuance or style in the food and bev. We spent some time in Spain over the summer, and what was totally different, we spent 2 weeks in a small town. It's 50,000 people, and you'd go to the restaurants. It was part of their culture to go out and eat. Like, everybody was out. But they were going out to the same restaurants over and over again, and it's like, you can build that relationship. It's like, "Oh, here comes, the Ciencio family. I know that, Adam only drinks Fanta and Isabella wants a Coke," and, like, they would pick up on those things. The challenge here is that everything's so fast and so dynamic and transient. It's like you're going from restaurant to restaurant. I don't think there's as much of a culture here locally of eat at the same place, like the idea of cheers where the bartender knows your name. I don't feel that as much, but maybe I'm just a little bit disconnected.
I tend to agree with you. I think not only is it fast paced, it's a much bigger space. Toronto has what 4 6 million people. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on the figures, but it's a lot. It's a lot of people who have a lot of options. So if we go back to your Spain experience, it's a small city, so everybody knows everybody. Back home for me, there is one place I went for lunch.
Oh, no.
So once I'm not at work and I have a day off, there's one place. And it's just because I felt comfortable. I know the menu, I know the parking, I know the bartenders. It's just one place. If Michelle and I are going on a date, they're usually like 2 or 3 restaurants that if she doesn't put her foot down and say, "Hey, let's try something new," that's where I'm going. So for me, one of the things I look forward to is building that kind of relationship where if you want to hang out with your friends, you're gonna think of Andrew's Bar. You have a business date or a business meal deal that you want to make, you're thinking of having lunch there. So I understand that it's gonna be difficult just based on the size of the city and so on, but I think it's possible, and that's kind of what I'm aiming for.
Oh, amazing. I think it's definitely possible. I know, there's a lot of restaurants here on Main Street, Unionville, where, we know the owners I probably know most of the owners of the restaurants by name, but just because we're literally here every day. Uh, but that makes a difference as well. And I think that there's a difference between an employee and then an engaged employee and then a owner. I think that there are, three different types of service you're going to get or three types of experiences. And a big part of that is the consistency, right? When you say you have just an employee, well, if every day there's a different person working with you at the restaurant, you're not gonna build that same relationship. You don't build a relationship with the menu, it's with the person.
And just to add that a bit further on that, an employee is just there to collect their wages. An engaged employee is collecting their wages, but they care about the success of the business. And then, of course, the owner cares about the success of the business even that much more than everyone else. So if you can have engaged employees, then you're on your way to success. I've seen I've worked with people who are not engaged. They're just here. I'm here to do what I have to do, get paid at the end of the month, and that's it. And then you have the engaged ones who are actively selling the company, actively looking for new clients, actively looking, hey, the door downstairs isn't working. Can you get that fixed? The employee will walk past it every day and care nothing about it. But engaged employees is something that you really have to strive to get in your business.
No, that's a great point. And, maybe for some people listening out there, maybe they're thinking about their work and they're thinking, man, I want a raise, I want a promotion. Well, you know what? It's really easy. Go from being an employee to an engaged employee.
Yeah.
And when you become really good at being an engaged employee, you can become an owner, right? You
Eventually.
see so many people that they're just stuck in the, employee mindset, saying like, "Man, my luck never changes. How come I'm swinging
It's
from job
not.
to job, or I never get a raise, or you know." I think you have to provide value before you receive value.
Yeah, and then when you're in that mindset, you see problems. When you're in an engaged mindset, you see opportunities. And that shift in just how you look at things is night and day with where you can be and what your success will look like.
Inspiring stuff. So tell me a little bit more as we're talking about the idea of you were at beautiful picturesque Jamaica and you said let's move to Canada. Did you work with a consultant or did you have some professional help in terms of like finding those pathways into it? Because that's something that I wouldn't even know where to start.
Well, yes and no. So there was a consultant who helped us with the immigration application. So, we did a lot of the legwork in terms of finding the school for me to attend. Michelle did her background checks in finding Markham, but that consultant helped us like apply for the student visa, apply for, and tell us what documents we would need and kind of help us through the process. It could be done without her, to be honest, but she kind of made things a little bit easier for us. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, perhaps you missed mistakes that you would have fallen into if you had done it on your own. I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
And of course, this is something that Michelle and I have spoken about. There is a space for this kind of service where you can not just help persons file a, a document or complete an application, but to help you look at the bigger picture, things that you probably never thought about. We were talking just earlier about like a walk score. So while we were looking for a condo when we just came, we learned about a walk score and we're like, we've never heard this before. That's something that, you know, a consultant could have helped with um, in terms of just even real estate advice. How do you and what to look for when entering a contract? What are your rights as a tenant? You know, do you want to get a house versus a condo? The various, when winter comes, how are you going to function? So her assistance was pretty basic. It was just okay, I'll complete this form you sign here, I'll submit it. But that additional information, we had to learn it on the go, talking to persons who we met along the way and, get that information. But that would have been awesome for us to have it before we came here.
Yeah, I think, when you're finding real estate, specifically, there's so many nuances to where you're gonna live, and knowing that you're getting advice from someone that is not just looking at the bricks and mortar, the color of the drywall. But like, does the school score or perceived quality of education matter to you? Does the walkability matter? What does that even mean? The walk score, right? It's basically the walk score is accumulation of data that points to how walkable is that location. Can you walk to public transit? Can you walk to banks and professional offices? Can you walk to grocery stores? Can you walk to schools and parks? All these things matter. And there's, you could say I'm moving to Toronto or the greater Toronto area. We call it the GTA. Yeah, but not all GTA is the same. The walk score in Uxbridge is very different than the walk score in Leaside, Toronto. So, you can have a cousin that says, "Oh, I'm moving to Toronto," but yeah, where are they? Are they in Hamilton? Because it's not really Toronto, but they'll say Toronto when they're in Kingston, Jamaica, right? Are they in Kingston, Canada? Because I think you miss by a lot if you're in the you picked the wrong Kingston.
You might get advice from someone who lives here, who doesn't understand what it is or what it would feel like to be here as a newcomer. You know, so where we lived in Kingston, I might say, "Hey, Ralph, this is a beautiful place. Let's relocate here." But you come here and you're like, "Hey, I don't drive. How am I gonna get around? I don't know the supermarket. I don't know the best supermarket to go to. I don't know where to go if I want to buy this particular thing." You know, so it would be good if that service was offered. I think there's a space for it, especially with the amount of immigrants that come to Canada annually. That's something that persons really could look to offering that kind of service.
I think there's a space there where people are, looking from a legal perspective, a lawyer that helps you apply for citizenship or landed status or, whatever the criteria you're looking for. But then when you talk about actual life skills, like what is it going to be like to live here? I think that'll be totally different. Yeah, that's interesting. Oh, maybe that'll be a space we can carve out here,
Maybe.
So let me ask the audience, if you're listening in, if you're watching this on any screen, comment down below something that you wish you knew before you moved to Canada or before you moved to Markham. Or if you're watching this and you haven't yet moved, let's get the community vibe going. Comment down below something you'd love to know, ask me anything truth of living here in Markham. So, either add what you wish you knew or add what you actually have a question of right now.
We try and answer as best as possible
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's always good to help the next person.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, ideas are something you can share because I can still keep it and I can share it. And now there's two of them. You know what I mean? And it's funny, we talk about new Canadians and the impact in our economy for new Canadians, immigrants. Sometimes they're demonized. And I think it's really easy for levels of government to demonize someone that doesn't live here or is that's new here because they may not have the ability to vote yet. So now you're demonizing someone that can't fight back to a politician. And I know when we talk about housing and housing crisis and they say, "Oh, you know, it's immigrants are driving up prices." I beg to differ. I don't think it's new Canadians that are driving up prices. If I want to be honest, I think the problem is divorce. That's the reason why housing gets so expensive in North America. Think about every divorce means that there's one house and now there's a demand for two houses. So you double the demand, right? So you sell one house, the matrimonial home, and now you occupy whether you buy or you rent two. So for every divorce, we're doubling the demand for real estate. So I would say if you have a problem with house prices, let's make divorce illegal, and I think the house prices are going to collapse. Uh, your marriage seminar, it's a great plug for the marriage seminar. Hey, can't get divorced? Why not work it out? It's a lot cheaper than buying another house, right?
Yeah, we can do something together.
Yeah, let's do it. But yeah, I don't know if there's something else you want to bring up, anything else you want to chat about or plug or shine some light.
No, really, I just want to share again, how great it has been. It's been an experience. There has been good, there has been bad. I remember talking to a friend of mine back in Jamaica about winter, and I was saying to him, "Yeah, it's cold, but you can prepare for the cold. You can layer up, you can dress. What you can't prepare for is, for me, there's no sun." I remember for weeks on end there was no sun, and I'm like, I understand now when people talk about seasonal depression. Yeah, because there's no sun. I
It's a big deal.
yeah, it is. Maybe not for everyone, but like for me, coming from Jamaica where it's bright and sunny every single day, to not have the sun and then to not be able to stay outside, you have to go inside. That's something that you don't really you can't get prepared for until you experience it. As I said, you can always layer up for the cold and you're fine, but that aspect of it is a bit difficult to maneuver. But it has been a wonderful experience. I've met some really great people. Um, I'm starting to learn new languages because I'm meeting.
That's it. Eh, ¿Estaban preparando para hablar en español? Okey. 2 cervezas.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been great. I think if we had to do it all over again, we would. I don't think there's anything that we would change. You mentioned your parents selling everything that had to come. That was one thing that we really considered, and we decided against it. Not because it's like a safety net, but just until we figure out what's what. You don't want to sell your home. You might come here and after a couple of months you realize you don't like it and you want to go back. So that's something that we kind of hesitated to do. It might have made things a bit easier because you'd have more capital to work with, but that's a decision that we took, and I think we still stand by it. Yeah. So there's nothing I would do differently. Only thing I would do differently is come earlier. Maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago.
Canada's changed quite a bit in the last couple of years, or, I think you came at a good time. It's always a good time. I'm very proud to be Canadian. One thing that I have noticed, and it's interesting because a lot of our topic today is about moving to Canada, but I'll tell you, in 2024, I have not moved more people out of Canada than I have this year. And the year's not even finished. But the number of families that have been in Canada for sometimes generations. We're helping one client. They've had 13 generations in Canada, and we're just selling his home. It's closing next week. He's moving to Bolivia. Just says I don't want to live here anymore. A lot of reasons. Sunlight might be one of them. Like Bolivia is pretty bright. Uh, a lot of reasons why, but it makes me think. And I remember chatting with you about this, and you said something really powerful. You said you may think it's better somewhere else. And I think that we have so much to be grateful for living here in Canada. I know there's challenges, but the reality is there's challenges everywhere you go. You're gonna have challenges. You have to pick your challenge, right?
So you have to really know what's good for you and what's good for your family, and ensure that wherever you're going, it lines up with your long-term goals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, wonderful. Listen, I want to bring us towards the end. If you're enjoying this content, if you'd like to find out more information, tips, insight for moving to Markham, subscribe to our page here, like the video, and of course comment. We'd love the engagement. If you have any questions or any future topics, future guests you'd like to see, and of course we encourage you to download our Moving to Markham starter kit, which is the link is down in the description. Has everything you need to know to beat the competition. Find a place you love and avoid costly mistakes.